At my grandson's birthday party, my daughter-in-law told me to eat in the garage, not because the house was full, not because there weren't enough chairs, but because, as she said with a smile, the real family would be eating inside. I said nothing. I picked up my paper plate. I walked out to the garage, and the next morning I changed my will. If you've ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace, if you've ever paid for love with your dignity, then stay with me. Because what happened after that was something my son never saw coming. My name is Margaret. I'm 69 years old. I was married to my husband Thomas for 41 years before cancer took him. He was the kind of man who never needed to announce his goodness. He just lived it. If a hinge was loose, he tightened it. If a neighbor needed help, he showed up. If family was drifting, he pulled people back together quietly. He believed homes were built in small repeated acts. Dinner at the table, coffee in the morning, calling when you said you would, showing up when it mattered. When he died, I kept those rituals alive. Not because I'm overly sentimental. I'm not. I was a fourth-grade teacher for 26 years. I believe in structure, in routine, in keeping things steady when other people are falling apart. So after Thomas passed, I kept Sunday dinner going. Roast chicken, potatoes, bread. Whatever dessert I had time to make. Sometimes it was just Andrew and me. Sometimes later, after he married, it became Andrew and Chloe too. Then children. Then toys on the floor. Then high chairs. Then noise. And for a while, I thought that meant life was doing what life is supposed to do. Expanding. Deepening. Continuing. But family can still look full while becoming hollow. That was the part one didn't understand soon enough. My son Andrew has always been gentle. He was a soft-hearted boy, the kind who hated seeing anyone upset, the kind who would give away his own snack at school if another child forgot theirs. That sounds lovely in a child. In a grown man, it can become something harder, because a man who hates conflict can become a man who avoids truth. Andrew grew into a good person, hardworking, reliable, careful, thoughtful in many ways, but emotionally he had a weakness. He wanted peace more than honesty. And men like that often marry women who are comfortable setting the emotional temperature of the entire room. That woman was Chloe. The first time Andrew brought her to my house, I noticed two things immediately. She was beautiful, and she was evaluating everything. Not admiring. Evaluating. My curtains. My dishes. The neighborhood. The kitchen layout. Even my refrigerator. She opened it while I was making coffee and said, "Oh wow. You still grocery shop like older people do." Then she smiled. I laughed. I wish I hadn't. Because women my age have been trained to laugh at the first insult. We tell ourselves not to be sensitive, not to overreact, not to make something out of nothing. But sometimes the nothing is the first clean warning you'll ever get. I didn't dislike Chloe then. Not exactly. I felt cautious. She was charming in the way some people are charming because they know charm is useful. She remembered names, complimented my table settings, asked questions that made her sound interested. But underneath it, I always felt something controlled. Like she was never fully with you, only managing the impression of being with you. Still, Andrew seemed happy. That mattered to me. So I overlooked things. The little corrections. The subtle dismissals. The way she once rearranged flowers on my table and said, "This looks cleaner." The way she called my house cozy, with a tone that suggested small. The way she referred to certain family traditions as old-fashioned, even while happily benefiting from them. I let it go. Then I let more go. And then without realizing it, I began letting too much go. Because love makes some women generous. And guilt makes them convenient. And I was becoming very convenient. I didn't realize it yet, but Chloe had already figured out something dangerous about me. She knew exactly which part of my heart could be used like an ATM. The money never started in an ugly way. That's important. People imagine exploitation arrives with audacity. It usually doesn't. It arrives wearing embarrassment, wearing urgency, wearing phrases like "just for now" and "until we get back on our feet." The first time Andrew asked for help, it made perfect sense. He had switched jobs. There was a temporary gap in insurance. He sounded ashamed to ask. I helped him immediately. I didn't hesitate. Why would I? He was my son. Then Chloe had their first baby. Maternity leave stretched their budget. I started sending groceries twice a month. Nothing extravagant. Diapers, formula, staples, fruit, frozen meals. Then they needed help with a stroller. Then part of a crib. Then a preschool deposit. Then a family phone bill issue. Then Andrew needed dental work. Then childcare costs rose. Then Chloe said they were trying to stabilize. That word. Stabilize. I heard it so often it stopped sounding temporary. What I didn't understand then was that temporary help becomes permanent very quickly when it makes life easier for everyone except the person providing it. Eventually, I wasn't just helping during emergencies. I was supporting comfort. A monthly transfer here. A bill there. A grocery account. A phone plan contribution. A holiday cash envelope. A zoo membership Chloe said was for the boys. School clothes. Birthday gifts. Christmas gifts. And because none of it happened all at once, I never stopped to total it. That was my mistake. People who benefit from your kindness often depend on one thing above all else, that you never sit down and count. There were signs. So many signs. But they were always just small enough to dismiss. At a school event, Chloe introduced me as Andrew's mom. Not Margaret. Not grandma. Not even the boy's grandmother. Just a relation. A background title. At Thanksgiving, she posted photos online captioned, "So grateful for my little family." Every photo included her parents. Andrew. The children. Not one included me. And yes, I know social media can be silly. But exclusion repeated often enough stops being silly. It becomes a language. Once, when Andrew had the flu, I brought over homemade soup. Chloe opened the door, took the container and said, "You really don't have to keep inserting yourself." Inserting myself. Into my son's life. That one stayed with me. Not because she said it loudly. Because she said it lightly. As if I were the unreasonable one for noticing. That was always Chloe's method. Never obvious enough to confront without looking dramatic. Never cruel enough to produce witnesses. Just precise enough to make me question my own reaction. And Andrew? He noticed more than he admitted. He always did. But his answers were soft. She didn't mean it like that. You know how she is. She's stressed. Maybe don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. I think weak men say that when they want women to carry the emotional cost of their silence. Still, I kept helping. Because then there were grandchildren. And that changed the game entirely. Once children arrive, manipulative adults learn quickly how to speak through them. It's for the boys. It would mean so much to them. We're just trying to give them the best start. Those phrases are powerful. Especially to a grandmother. Especially to one who already lost a husband and thinks keeping family close is the last sacred duty left to her. So I kept showing up. Kept paying. Kept smoothing things over. And somewhere along the way I stopped being valued. I became useful. Useful women are tolerated. Valued women are respected. I didn't know then which one I had become. But Chloe did. She knew exactly. And then came my grandson's birthday party. The day Chloe stopped hinting. And finally said the quiet part out loud. The birthday party was in late May. My younger grandson Noah was turning 3. Chloe had organized the whole thing as if it were being photographed for a magazine spread. Balloon arch in the driveway. Custom cupcakes. Color-coordinated decorations. Matching shirts for the children. A giant acrylic welcome sign on the front lawn. There were guests everywhere. Chloe's parents, Richard and Anne. Her sister Melanie and her husband. Several neighborhood couples. A few people from Andrew's office. Children running around the den. Gift bags arranged by size and color. Catered food warming in neat silver trays. It was beautiful. I'll give her that. Chloe knew how to build a scene. I arrived with a wrapped wooden train set, homemade banana pudding, and a cashmere sweater for my older grandson because Chloe once mentioned he always got cold in restaurants. I had dressed carefully too. Navy slacks. A light cardigan. Pearl earrings Thomas gave me on our 30th anniversary. Nothing flashy. Just respectful. Because even at 69, I still believed in honoring the occasion. Inside, the dining room table was set for adults. Real plates. Cloth napkins. Flowers in small glass vases. I noticed immediately there were many seats. Not endless. But enough. Enough that no one needed to be sent anywhere strange. Enough that if someone wanted me there, I would have been there. That distinction matters. Because what happened next was not about logistics. It was about status. When lunch was served, Chloe walked over to me smiling. That beautiful controlled smile. The one that always arrived right before a sentence designed to leave no fingerprints. She touched my arm lightly and said, "Oh, Margaret, we're putting overflow in the garage. We thought it would be better if the real family stayed inside with the boys." The real family. I still remember the sound of that phrase. Soft. Pleasant. Calculated. For a second I thought maybe I had misheard her. Then I looked up. Her mother was already pulling out a chair inside. Her father was seated. Her sister was helping one of the boys with a napkin. Andrew was carrying drinks from the kitchen. He heard her. He looked at me. And then he looked away. That was the moment. Not because the garage was uncomfortable. Not because the house was crowded. But because in one sentence, Chloe told me exactly what I was to her. Not family. Support. A resource. Good enough to help pay for the birthday. Not good enough to sit at it. In the garage there was a folding table. 2 paper plates. Plastic forks. A pitcher of lemonade sweating in the heat. A bicycle pump in the corner. A storage bin labeled Christmas lights. 1 broken beach chair. 1 fan that clicked every time it turned. It wasn't overflow seating. It was staging. A message arranged like furniture. I smiled. And said, "That's fine." I took my paper plate. Walked into the garage. Sat down. And ate baked ziti beside a box of winter clothes while laughter drifted in from the dining room. I didn't cry. I didn't confront her. I didn't leave. That surprises some people. But there is a kind of silence that is not surrender. It is conclusion. I sat there and understood with complete clarity that I had spent years paying to remain adjacent to a family system that did not respect me. That realization was colder than humiliation. Colder than anger. It was clean. When I drove home, I sat in my driveway for nearly 20 minutes. No music. No tears. Just silence. Not sad silence. Inventory silence. The kind of silence that comes right before a woman stops excusing what she already knows. That night, for the first time in years, I stopped asking how Chloe felt about me, and started asking a much more dangerous question. Exactly how much had this family cost me? Inside my house, everything looked the same. My kitchen. My table. The same curtains Thomas once said made the room feel warm. The same porch light on its timer. The same framed school photos of Andrew over the years. The same house where I had hosted holidays, grieved losses, and kept traditions alive long after it became clear I was the only one truly protecting them. I made tea, sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out a yellow legal pad, and started writing. Phone support, preschool money, groceries, monthly transfers, Christmas cash, birthday gifts, the stroller, part of the crib, the dental bill, the zoo membership, a travel deposit Chloe once described as family bonding, streaming subscriptions, a credit card authorization. The list grew quickly. That shocked me, because I had never thought of myself as a woman being taken advantage of. I thought of myself as generous, supportive, present. But generosity without boundaries can look exactly like self-erasure from the wrong side of the transaction. The next morning I called my bank. I requested 3 years of recurring transfers and automated payments. Then I called my financial advisor. Then an attorney. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted precision. By Tuesday afternoon, my statements were spread across the kitchen table. By Wednesday morning I had a highlighter, a calculator, and a number. $81,347. I checked it twice. Then a third time. $81,347. That's what I had spent helping Andrew and Chloe build a household in which I could be told to eat in the garage because the real family needed my seat. Numbers are merciless that way. They strip sentiment off a situation. They remove the pretty language. They expose what affection has been covering. And yet even then, some small part of me still wanted to believe Andrew was simply weak. That Chloe was the architect and he was just drifting in her shadow. Then I found the email. It was in an old printed chain tucked between tax records and appliance receipts. from nearly 2 years earlier. The year Andrew called saying they were short on preschool tuition. I remembered the urgency in his voice. The panic. The shame. "It's for the boys, Mom." That one sentence had moved me faster than almost anything. I sent $6,500 that same day. What he forwarded me back then was the tuition form. What he accidentally left attached beneath it was the exchange with Chloe. Her email said, "Don't tell her it's for the Hawaii deposit. Say it's for preschool and she'll send it today. She never says no when it's about the kids." Andrew replied, "Okay." That was all. No hesitation. No objection. No conscience in writing. Just okay. I sat there staring at that email for a very long time. There are moments when hurt stops being emotional and becomes structural. This was one of them. Because that email proved something I could never again unknow. They had studied me. They had mapped my weak point. They knew exactly which lie would work. And it did work. Because it was never about need. It was about access. Access to my love. Access to my fear. Access to the one part of me that still thought protecting children justified any sacrifice. I made tea because I didn't know what else to do. Then I called my attorney back and made the appointment sooner. Because once I found that email, this stopped being a family misunderstanding and became documented betrayal. The next person to read that email was my lawyer. And the very first thing she told me to do was this: change everything. My attorney's name was Linda Mercer. She had the kind of office that made you feel steadier just by sitting in it. Quiet. Clean. No clutter. No nonsense. I brought the statements. The legal pad. The email. She read everything carefully and asked only a few questions. Then she leaned back and said, "You need to stop all voluntary support immediately." She paused. "And you should revise your estate documents before this escalates." Before this escalates. That phrase landed hard. 'Cause I knew she was right. Women like Chloe rarely collapse under exposure. They adapt. They become offended. They become strategic. They turn consequences into a story about cruelty. So I did exactly what Linda advised. First, I changed my will. Not dramatically. Not in anger. Precisely. Methodically. The old assumptions ended there. Then I went home and opened every account I had. Every transfer. Every automated charge. Every recurring benefit I could find. The monthly support. The grocery account. The phone bill contribution. The shared streaming bundle. The travel card privileges. The small college savings contribution I had been quietly making. Everything voluntary. Everything repeatable. Everything that had taught two grown adults to build part of their stability around my silence. I canceled it all. By the time I was done, 19 recurring supports were gone. Not with a speech. Not with a warning. Just gone. I made eggs for dinner that night. Toast. Tea. And for the first time in a very long while I felt hungry. That's how I knew I had done the right thing. For days later Andrew called. "Mom," he said. "The transfer didn't go through." "I know." Silence. Then, "Why?" That question told me more than any confession could have. Why? As though money moving from me to them was the natural order of the world. As though I had interrupted a system that belonged to them. "I reviewed my finances," I said. "I made changes." He went quiet. In the background I heard Chloe. Not words. Just urgency. That evening they called together. Chloe spoke first. Calm voice. Measured tone. Perfectly chosen vocabulary. "I think major financial decisions that affect the family should be discussed respectfully." Respectfully. The woman who seated me in the garage wanted to discuss respect. Then she said the real thing. "We've built our obligations around a certain level of support." There it was. Not gratitude. Not partnership. Expectation. A certain level of support. Like I was a line item. A dependable service. A resource that had malfunctioned. I said, "That support is over." And then came the threat. Softly delivered. As always. "Well, children notice who makes an effort," Chloe said. "Relationships with grandparents don't maintain themselves." Access. There it was. If guilt didn't work, she would move to the grandchildren. I ended the call. My hands didn't shake. That mattered. Not because I wasn't hurt, because for the first time I trusted my own clarity more than their language. 10 days later, Andrew showed up at my door with donuts and an apology. But I had something sitting in a folder beside the kitchen table, and one look at it changed his face completely. Andrew came on a Saturday morning. Alone. He was carrying donuts from my favorite bakery. That detail nearly broke my heart, because it was such an old reflex. A son trying to soften the room before speaking in it. I let him in. Made coffee. Set out 2 plates. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, and for a moment looked so much like the boy he had once been that I felt a familiar instinct rise up. To make this easier. To comfort him first. To help him speak. But comfort is not always kindness. Sometimes comfort is just the thing that keeps weak people weak. So I waited. Andrew apologized. But not clearly. He was sorry things had gotten tense. Sorry Chloe had handled things badly. Sorry everyone was under pressure. He used foggy words. Tense. Pressure. Handled. The vocabulary of people who want forgiveness without having to name the harm. I let him finish. Then I opened the folder beside me and slid the printed email across the table. He looked down, and all the color left his face. "You found that," he whispered. Yes. That one word did more than any speech I could have given. Because suddenly he knew the safe version of the story was over. He started crying. Quietly. Embarrassed. Like a man who had finally met the written record of his own cowardice. I didn't rush to comfort him. I didn't say it's okay. Because it wasn't okay. Comfort too early is how mothers accidentally protect their sons from the consequences that might finally teach them something. He said, "I know how bad it looks." I said, "Andrew, it doesn't look bad." "It is bad." He nodded. Then tried once to start with, Chloe thought. I stopped him. I am no longer interested in what Chloe thought when my money left my account. That landed. You could see it. Because for the first time, Andrew realized the shield of my wife said, was no longer going to work. He left an hour later. The donuts stayed in the box. I didn't eat any. 10 days after that, Chloe asked for what she called a family conversation. She wanted her parents there. Andrew there. Me there. She said everyone needed healing. People like Chloe love words like healing. Because healing sounds noble. And noble language is very useful when you need witnesses. I agreed immediately. But I invited one person too. My friend Elaine. Widow. Former school principal. A woman so composed she could make a liar sweat just by sitting quietly. If Chloe wanted an audience, I wanted balance. Saturday at 2. My living room. My house. My terms. And I prepared very carefully. Not emotionally. That part was done. Practically. I printed the statements again. Printed the email. Organized everything in a clean folder. Because if there's one thing I learned from teaching children and dealing with adults, it's this. The calmest woman in the room becomes very dangerous once she has documentation. Chloe came dressed in cream and ready to perform. But she had no idea that before the afternoon was over, I was going to read her own words back to her in front of everyone. I slept surprisingly well the night before the meeting. Better than I had slept in months. Maybe peace begins the moment you stop negotiating with what you already know. I woke early. Made coffee. Walked the neighborhood loop I'd recently started doing in the mornings. Then came home, showered and dressed carefully. Gray cardigan. Black slacks. Pearl studs. Not formal. Not soft. Clear. At 2 o'clock they arrived. Chloe in cream. Andrew pale and exhausted. Her parents, Richard and Anne, polite but uneasy. Elaine came 5 minutes early, exactly as expected, and sat near the window without saying much. We all settled into the living room. I offered tea. Everyone accepted except Chloe. That told me everything I needed to know. She still thought she controlled the tone. She began. Of course she did. Her voice was perfect. Measured. Gentle. Controlled. She spoke about family strain. About hurt on all sides. About the sadness of recent distance. About how my financial decisions had been sudden and destabilizing. About how the children deserved unity. About how we all needed grace. It was beautifully done. Truly. If I had not lived the last 5 years myself, I might have been impressed. When she finished, the room was quiet. Then I said, "Thank you." I'd like to add context. I got the folder, sat down, and laid the papers on the coffee table one by one. Bank statements, monthly transfers, phone support, groceries, preschool money, the travel card, holiday help, the college savings contributions, then the total, $81,347. No one spoke. Numbers do that. They make performance harder. Then I placed the email on top and read it aloud. Slowly, clearly, exactly as written. Don't tell her it's for the Hawaii deposit. Say it's for preschool and she'll send it today. She never says no when it's about the kids. Then Andrew's reply. Okay. The room went completely still. Not polite silence. Truth silence. The kind that lands when everybody knows all at once that the polished version of events cannot survive what is now sitting on the table. And stared at the page. Richard removed his glasses. Andrew looked at the floor. Elaine asked in the calmest voice imaginable. What part of that was misunderstood? That was when Chloe lost control. Not loudly, not theatrically, but visibly. You're humiliating us, she said. There it was. Not regret, not remorse, not shame, indignation, the anger of a person furious that the audience did not follow the script. I said, no, I'm correcting the record. For 1 second I thought she might recover. She was good at recovering. But then she made the mistake people like Chloe always make when their performance cracks. She told the truth accidentally. She said, after everything we've done to include you, and stopped. Too late. Because that sentence exposed the entire structure. Include me. In my son's family. In my grandchildren's lives. In a system I had helped fund for years. Richard closed his eyes and looked down. Elaine said nothing. She didn't have to. Silence was enough. They left 20 minutes later. No screaming. No slamming doors. No dramatic blow-up. Just the slow, heavy silence of people carrying truth out of a room they cannot control anymore. After they left, Elaine went to the kitchen and put the kettle on without asking. That is one of the most loving things a friend can do. Not advice. Not outrage. Just steadiness. We drank tea in the late afternoon light. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe all the way down into my lungs. But the real aftermath didn't begin when Chloe left my house. It began with the phone calls that came afterward. Because once her parents saw the truth, everything started shifting. Fast. And called first. Her voice was embarrassed. Not defensive. Not angry. Embarrassed. She said she had not known. I believed her. Because sometimes parents know far less about the character of their adult children than the world assumes. Richard called 2 days later. Formal. Measured. He apologized for attending under what he now understood had been incomplete information. That was his polite way of saying he had been used as a prop. I appreciated it. As for Chloe, there was silence. And that silence told me more than any apology would have. Because apologies from people like Chloe are usually just strategy wearing good manners. Andrew came by a week later. No donuts this time. No peace offering. No script. Just him. He sat at my kitchen table and admitted it. The preschool lie. The Hawaii deposit. The fact that he had heard Chloe send me to the garage and said nothing because he didn't want a scene. I listened. Then I told him the truth. The scene already happened. You just left me in it alone. He cried again. But this time it was different. Not the cry of a man caught. The cry of a man finally seeing himself clearly. He said he didn't know how things had gotten so bad. I said, things get this bad one small excuse at a time. That stayed with him. I could tell. Then I told him where we stood. I am willing to rebuild with you. But not on the old terms. No lies. No speaking to me through your wife. No treating my help like household infrastructure. No letting me be insulted to keep your life comfortable. He said yes. And for the first time in a very long while, I believed him enough to leave the door open. That summer my life got bigger. I hadn't realized how much I had shrunk myself around Andrew's household. Staying available. Staying ready. Staying emotionally on call. Calling it devotion when it was really a slow surrender. So I stopped. I joined the Thursday book club I had been putting off for 2 years. Started having lunch with my old colleague Patricia twice a month. Had my neighbor Ruth over on Wednesdays. Cooked what I wanted. Read what I wanted. Kept my weekends mine unless I chose otherwise. The house changed too. Not physically. The same cabinets. Same garden. Same kitchen window. But the atmosphere was different. The anxiety was gone. That low-grade feeling of waiting for someone else's need. One morning in July, I sat with my coffee by the window and realized I was happy. Not relieved. Happy. Those are not the same thing. Relief is what happens when pain lifts. Happiness is what happens when peace settles in. Andrew and Chloe separated in August. He told me on a Saturday morning. He had rented an apartment. Signed the lease himself. Set up the utilities himself. Bought his own couch. His own dishes. His own groceries. And underneath the sadness in his voice, I heard something else. Ownership. Responsibility. The beginning of a spine. I did not celebrate the end of his marriage. A marriage ending is still grief. Even when the marriage was built badly. But I didn't mourn the illusion either. Some things fall apart because they were being held together by somebody else's silence. In September I hosted Sunday dinner again. Not because tradition demanded it. 'Cause I wanted to. I used my best dishes. Not because guests were special. 'Cause I was. There were 10 people at my table that night. Elaine. Ruth. Patricia. My niece Claire and her husband. 2 women from book club. A couple from church. And Andrew. He came early to help set the table. At one point while reaching for the serving bowls on the top shelf he said quietly, "I'm sorry for all of it. Not for the misunderstanding. Not for the tension. Not for the bad season. For all of it." That was the apology I accepted. Because it had shape. Because it had truth inside it. Because it came after consequence instead of trying to prevent it. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the dishes were done, I stood alone in my kitchen with one last glass of wine and thought about the strange cost of love. I spent years believing the worst thing that could happen was losing access to the family I loved. I was wrong. The worst thing is keeping access by agreeing to your own humiliation. The worst thing is funding your own disrespect and calling it generosity. The worst thing is staying quiet so long that people begin to mistake your kindness for their right. That is the real danger. Not losing people. Losing yourself while keeping them. If there's a lesson in my story, it isn't that helping family is foolish. Helping family can be beautiful. Generosity can be beautiful. Love can be beautiful. But only when it is given freely and received with respect. The moment someone starts treating your kindness like a standing obligation, something has already gone wrong. And the longer you stay silent, the more expensive that lesson becomes. I paid $81,347 to learn it. Honestly, I still think I got off cheap. Because in the end I got myself back. So now I want to ask you something. And I really do want to know. If your daughter-in-law smiled and told you to eat in the garage so the real family could sit inside, what would you have done? Would you have stayed quiet? Would you have walked out? Would you have cut everything off that same week? Tell me in the comments. Because I have a feeling I'm not the only woman who learned too late that love without boundaries becomes permission. If this story hit home for you, leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity, I especially want to hear from you. Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new stories.